When looking at a map, you probably notice the borders between different countries. A lot of times, these borders are determined by natural formations like rivers and mountains, and they can also be determined by cultural divides. But there are some borders that don't seem to be determined by really anything. They just seem to be a bunch of random wavy lines drawn on the map that have no rhyme or reason to their existence. In no continent is this more common than in Africa, where we have some very oddly shaped countries. Which begs the question, why? Why does Africa have such odd borders? Well, welcome to the YouTube channel The Wig, and today I'll be talking about the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884 through 1885, where some of the world's greatest powers came together to divide Africa amongst themselves. The story of Africa's borders begins during the late 1800s. Before this time frame, Africa was not a very desirable landmass for the great colonial powers of Europe. Most of the continent was unexplored, and not enough profitable resources were found in the area to spur colonialization. Cairo and the Suez Canal was immensely valuable, but aside from this, many European powers just did not see the profit in creating risky colonies on the African continent. Portugal was largely the only country to set up territory in Africa, but these colonies largely stayed on the coast and never ventured far into the interior of Africa. To put it simply, Europe just did not view Africa as a valuable landmass to exploit, so they largely let it alone. But that was until the second half of the 1800s. New technologies allowed colonizers to venture deeper into Africa than ever before, and valuable resources were soon being discovered across the continent. Explorers like David Livingstone mapped out new lands that enticed the great powers of Europe, spurring a new age of colonialism. Britain, intent on expanding their ever-growing empire, invested heavily in colonizing Africa, alongside France, who was hoping to increase national pride after its disastrous defeat in the Franco-Prussian War against Germany. Africa was a new, rich land for European empires to extend their dominance over, and also make large sums of money in the process. Even minuscule nations like Belgium, especially its ruling monarch at the time, King Leopold II, wanted a chunk of the continent for themselves. Leopold, though, unlike all the other great powers, presented himself not as a money-hungry colonial nation, but as a kind, generous king who simply wanted to explore Africa in the name of science and in the name of converting the locals to Christianity. In 1876, he even hosted a conference comprised of geographers and explorers, and also funded explorations into Africa, especially the rich region of the Congo, in order to combat slavery and pursue scientific endeavors. Soon, after numerous explorations of the area, Leopold would go on to claim the region of the Congo as a part of Belgium's empire. This claim, however, interfered with another held by Portugal, and controversy soon arose over who would receive the wealthy and vital area. All European countries wanted access to the Congo River due to its importance in trade, and many also wanted the land of the Congo for themselves, so deciding who would receive it was a controversial task. Portugal would go on to call on Germany's famed Chancellor Otto von Bismarck to finally resolve the issue in the Congo, and also the growing debate over who got which lands in Africa. Throughout all this, Germany held little interest in colonizing Africa, but Bismarck feared that if Germany did not colonize Africa, then it would be behind all the other great powers, so it started grasping for new colonies along with everyone else. Britain and France viewed Germany expanding its lands in Africa as a threat due to Germany's immense power at this time. And so, Britain and France gathered together to oppose German expansion into Africa. This caused tensions to rise in Europe, and the ceaseless bickering between powers over who got what territory certainly made the situation in Europe a lot worse. Otto von Bismarck saw Portugal's call for European powers to meet and determine the Congo's fate as a chance to shut down tensions by dividing the lands of Africa in a way that made everyone happy. Soon, Bismarck called on the United Kingdom, France, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Belgium, Denmark, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Sweden, and the Ottoman Empire to send representatives to Berlin and negotiate the borders of African colonies and resolve growing tensions. On November 15th, 1884, delegates from some of the world's most powerful nations met together in Berlin, beginning what would come to be known as the Berlin Conference. As I've kind of already mentioned, Germany's primary goal in the conference was to halt escalating situations in Africa before a war could break out, and also they wanted to grab a few colonies along the way. Meanwhile, the UK wanted land in Africa that stretched from Cairo all the way to South Africa in an unbroken line. Portugal just wanted more land and also to substantiate their claim to the Congo River estuary. Belgium just wanted to gain the Congo, and Leopold II especially wanted to make himself an empire. France just wanted to increase territory and regain its lost prestige after the aforementioned Franco-Prussian War. America was also there to protect monetary interest involved with Africa. Sweden was also there, and they were there to promote free access to the Congo River. There were other countries involved too, of course, with Italy, obviously, also just trying to increase their territory. But other countries like Russia and Austro-Hungary really were just kind of there to be there. They really had very little interest in Africa, and they were more focused on extending their influence into the Balkans instead. The Ottoman Empire was also there, and they pretty much visited the conference to try to push some of their goals in North Africa, but none of these goals would really amount to much. Probably the most pressing issue of the Berlin Conference was who would control the Congo. It was a rich area, and competing powers had competing claims on the region, so deciding who would get it was a very, very difficult decision. Whoever held the Congo not only had access to incredibly rich resources, but they would also control the Congo River, which I kind of already said before, was a very important trading avenue that no power wanted their rivals to hold. This situation was perfect for Leopold II. He ruled a minor, weak country that was not threatening to any major power in Europe. So by giving the Congo away to Leopold, it would not really upset the balance of power in Europe all too much. Leopold also impressed conference members with his zeal for human rights, science, and missionary work. The United States was the first country to endorse Leopold's claim to the Congo, and almost all the countries in the conference would go on to endorse his claim as well. Soon, Leopold II was given control of the incredibly rich region of the Congo. Notice how I said Leopold was given control of the Congo instead of Belgium. This was because the Berlin Conference gave Leopold II personal control of the Congo. It was Leopold II's personal property, and not the property of Belgium. One stipulation, though, to Leopold's control of the Congo was that he had to let the Congo River be neutral, and all the powers had to have free access to it. Well, at the end of the conference, almost all the great powers were happy. France received large tracts of Western Africa. Britain did not get their continuous line that they wanted, but they did get a ton of land in Africa. Portugal did not get the Congo River, but it did get Mozambique and Angola. Italy got a piece of Ethiopia, as well as Somalia. And Germany got Namibia and Tanzania. And finally, Spain got Equatorial Guinea. So again, almost all the countries were happy with the proceedings of the Berlin Conference, especially Leopold II. He had successfully scammed his way into gaining an incredibly rich piece of Africa. So you know how I talked about how Leopold acted like such a nice guy, and only wanted the colony to stop slavery in the region and convert the locals to Christianity and also to increase scientific research. Well, that was all just a facade. In truth, Leopold really wanted the Congo so that he could make a ton of money. Not money for his country, no, money for himself. He tricked all of the great powers of Europe into thinking he was some kind philanthropist. But after gaining the Congo, Leopold would go on to enslave Africans living in the region and force them to find valuable materials like ivory or rubber. Leopold would hold families hostage and would only release them if the head of the family was able to meet Leopold's monthly rubber quotas. During Leopold's reign of the Congo, 5 to 10 million people died. Leopold's rule broke the guidelines of the Berlin Conference, and thankfully control of the region was taken away from him in 1908. The Berlin Conference was a highly influential event in world history. Many of Africa's strange-looking borders originated in the Berlin Conference, as all of the great powers of Europe tried to carve up Africa in a way that made everyone happy. Additionally, the Berlin Conference, while deflating tensions at the time, would actually go on to create a whole lot of problems in the early 20th century, as African colonialism would encourage the onset of the First World War.